This podcast is a part of the More Podcast Network.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Daily Leader Podcast by Pattern Talent, where we interview great leaders and we seek to understand leadership. I'm Brad McDonald.
And I'm Taylor Jessup, and we really hope that you enjoy this episode.
Hey everybody, welcome back. Another episode of the Daily Leader. For those of you listening online, you cannot tell that Brad is inappropriately holding his Kirkland bottle too close to him for comfort. It's making me feel slightly uncomfortable, but that's what
Costco
happened.
water.
Yeah, it's Kirkland.
Take that, Shane Kuiper.
They should know that. But hey, we're so glad you did join us. We're so glad that you have chosen to listen to this podcast, and we would ask you to go ahead and subscribe, follow us, whatever platform you are on. All those things would be fantastic. Tell your mother, your father, your sister, your brother what we're up to here at the Daily Leader. All of that would be great. We do ask you to comment, lots of comments, mostly on Brad's height, age, and inappropriate sayings that he says. And we have some incredible new opportunities coming up here at the Daily Leader. Brad and I are opening up our Daily Leader podcast community along with group coaching, and there are multiple facets of that. You can dive in and be a part of our group coaching, which is a paid service, very much worth it. I would say, man, that might even be better than the one-on-one coaching that we have oftentimes, not to shoot Brad and I in the foot, but I think the experience that we have when we're together with a group can be very, very powerful. There are also parts of that platform that encourage you to connect with others, whether you're wrestling with your own identity, yourself, who you are. We've got a group called Imposters Anonymous. We also have a group called The Movement. And the movement encourages just what it sounds like. Again, for those of you listening online, you can't see Brad is flexing. Again, embarrassing. But we're going to move on as he is pretending to get in shape. We
Ask me how many pull-ups I did last night.
How many pull-ups did you do last night, Brad?
11.
11 pull-ups last night. Wow. One more than what was asked of you. I am fairly impressed. Way to go. Way to go.
I've got some new folks to add into the movement, by the way. I need to talk to you about that off at a recorded podcast.
Yeah.
But I'm excited.
Well, we're going to keep moving. That's what we're going to do. We're going to keep.
Yeah, we are. It's good for you. And it feels nice.
Is. Well, it does and it doesn't. Sometimes it doesn't feel great in the moment. I sat outside the gym yesterday, to which I hadn't been in a while. I've been going through a lot of personal stuff recently. My mother did pass away, which has been very challenging, and I felt less motivated to go to the gym in a while. So I just sat outside the gym for a good 15 minutes before I got.
Did you go in?
I did go in. Yeah, I hit up the treadmill, probably about 10 minutes, but really for about 8. The rest of it I was like setting some music, and then I did a little light lift. It wasn't much. I'm gonna get some tennis in today. That's my movement. But
I'm curious. All right, I don't want to move on too quickly because you just shared something big.
Yeah.
Right. I'm curious. How's Taylor? And would it be cool to tell the listeners a little bit about just what you've been learning and some of your reflections over the last week or two?
Yeah, that's good.
In light of your mom passing.
Those are good questions. Taylor is. It depends on the moment for that to answer that. There's some moments where I'm totally fine. There's some moments where I'm just breaking down and super sad. There's some I've snapped multiple times at my wife, and just like anger that just bubbles up out of nowhere. Which has been interesting. I'll feel totally fine and then snap at something. I call it a $90 reaction to a $10 problem. Something that's pretty small. And then you look at, my reaction is pretty big. So then you got to ask yourself, what is the extra $80 about? Right. And that's the internal battle for me, is like, oh man, I've done that multiple times and had to come back and apologize to Janelle, talk through that. And she's had so much grace with me, which is super kind. I'm not sure I would have as much grace for me as she's had. So yeah, what have I been learning, man? It's interesting. My mom, for the listeners who don't know, was a great woman. She battled cancer for basically the last 7 years. Um, went through a stem cell transplant. It's kind of the reason I moved out here. And so we kind of like you kind of prepare for it the whole time. She didn't die of her cancer. There were some medical complications when she went to the hospital, and there's a whole bunch of things involved, but it happened very quick. So, no matter how much you have prepared for that grief, you can't really prepare for it. I think some of the things that I'm learning that have been super important to me. My mom and I's relationship had multiple different facets to it. Some were great and some were not so great. Some were really hard. And I had set some boundaries up for myself that I don't think were bad. I think that they were good, but I was really challenged on some of that where maybe I was thinking too much inward. You throwing your phone? You mad? Uh, and I was kind of challenged, like, hey, what relationship are you committed to having with your mom? And I had no idea what was going to happen. And my wife and I talked, and we said, hey, like, okay, mom is sick. She's not doing great. We want her to know her grandbabies. We want to bring as much joy to her life as possible. And so we just committed to that, man. And we started trying to show up as more and be there more with no idea what was going to happen. So I think one of the things is like, man, those who you love or you invest in, like whatever the hard conversation is that you're avoiding, I would have it. Like I waited. I don't have too many regrets, honestly. I don't even know if it's a regret. I think the timing was fine, but I'm like, man, I had no idea. I went away on a Saturday, went up camping with the girls. I had no idea that I had seen my mom for the last time. So like, I always say this all the time, like, oh, life is short. You got to seize the moment, but you also got to like press into those parts of life that you don't want to press into, because you can't ever guarantee results, but you can at least say that if you've been courageous, you've been brave, that you've done your best, and you don't know what's going to happen. I think one of the other things that I learned is the massive impact that my mom has had on so many people. Like, it's nuts. I know you came over. It's mostly all my dad's friends, Bible study people, and neighborhood people that like all showed up talking just incredible stories about this tiny woman that was like super powerful and influential in her neighborhood. Everybody was coming over saying she was the grandma of the neighborhood, would come around on, Father's Day and Mother's Day and give everybody gifts and, loved on us and would talk to us while we're riding. We live in Scottsdale, very Scottsdale things like the Scottsdale moms riding their bikes in the front, having some drinks. And they would stop by and talk with mom. And she would say, geez, I wish I was young again. I wish I could go do that with you. And so, but yeah, I mean, she was a Jesus person all the way to the last moment, man. Like, if you're gonna live it, live it. Like she was trying to get the doctor that was, performing the surgery on her to like know Jesus, and just significantly impactful stuff. So, yeah, it's pretty fresh. So I think what I'm learning is still kind of coming together, but whatever you're avoiding, like we talked with Chad Brown, you know, like whatever you don't face will destroy you. Like whatever that dragon is that you're not willing to face today, that will destroy you. And you don't know when and how and where. All those things you don't actually get to plan out. The only thing you get to plan out is how you're going to show up. So, there's
One of
parts
the
of
one of the thoughts that I wanted to remind you of. We'll talk about Wooster here in a minute whenever we reflect on the pod with Justin. But I remember doing this call with Wooster one time, and I was processing through something that I didn't have the words for, and he talked about the napalm warehouse. You remember this?
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever talk to Wooster about this?
I think I've heard it, but I don't think I talked to about
It's like this city in Asia somewhere, and they had all of this explosive material, and they lost count of like the inventory. They kind of forgot about it. It was just this sort of ammunition and this explosive material. It was tucked away in a warehouse. It was fine. It was locked up. It was all over there. Well, apparently, the quantity of explosive material that they had in that warehouse was like far, far, far too much for one area of land. Like, you can't keep that amount of explosive material in one place. And the worst happened, and there was this massive explosion and killed a bunch of people, just completely obliterated this whole block of the city or whatever. And Wooster's point in telling the story was that it's a lot like our emotions. It's a lot like the internal dialogue, our thoughts and our feelings, all the spiritual things that go on inside each of us, that if we don't maintain a kind of working inventory, it's just so easy to lose track. And it's not the good things that happen when we lose. It's not like losing track is not a good thing of this sort of thing. It's like losing track always leads to an excess of unfiltered, uninventoried, unarticulated emotions, and they just begin to kind of pop off. And one of the things, one of my favorite things about you is just the amount of time and intentionality that you put into self-awareness, and how you help other people level up their self-awareness, become more self-aware, focus more on self-awareness. And I'm just always encouraged by how you are an incredible example of that. And I appreciate you being willing to be vulnerable with the audience and vulnerable with me. And as this was obviously not planned, but I think an important opportunity for you to just take a moment in time and just share what you're going through and what's on your heart and mind and how you're wrestling through it in real time.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, sometimes I don't know that I always do a great job of that. I do my best to understand what's going on in here, mostly because I spent so much of my life not. And even still, now it's, when things happen and you pop off, you're like, whoa, whoa, what was that?
Mm-hmm.
What's going on? So yeah, when you lose somebody, I mean, I never lost somebody this close to me. Like, I'm sure I know there's some of our listeners that have lost a parent that know the level and extent to which that just kind of plays with your mind. But yeah, the biggest things that I've learned is, man, love those people that you're with, and do the things that you don't want to do that you're avoiding, because you don't know, man. So which is why we need people, which is why we need friends, which is why we need community. Bring that all the way back to our shared community group. Like, there is a chance that you might be going through life alone, or you may not have the right people in your corner right now, in your business, in your personal life, in your wherever. If you don't, and you think you can do it alone, you can. It's just lonely, and you can only do it to the level and extent you can. That old African proverb says, alone we can go fast, but together we can go far. Like, together is sustainable. So maybe group community is not for you, Daily Leader Podcast community. But if you don't have community, you need to go find some. You need to go get some.
Thank you. Good reflections, man. I appreciate that.
Rock on. So, all right, lounge. We're back. We haven't done a lounge in a while. I think you did some lounges without me, which is fantastic. Probably way better. You are
A little boring.
okay.
Little
I was
boring.
waiting.
Definitely.
Yeah, I wanted you to say it. That was kind of a setup for you to come in and actually say that.
Yeah, I mean, we're just, we're better together. What are you going to do?
Sure. Yeah, it's like a Jack Johnson song.
Yeah, I'm kind of like Ricky Bobby, and you're like the other guy. I'm like Batman, and you're like maybe Robin.
Wow.
Something like that.
Okay, so I'm the Magic Man.
Well,
That's You realize Ricky Bobby's the one that kind of falls apart. He does come back at the end, I think, if I remember the movie. But
Yeah, he's
that's
kind
fine.
of the main guy, you know.
Sure. Yeah, you can
He's
stab
this.
yourself
He's
in
the
the
one who
leg.
slingshots.
Yeah, you can stab yourself in the leg and blame Tom Cruise and his witchcraft all you want, Brad. I'm okay with that. Moving on from that, as we are in our partnership and as we do here on the lounge, I don't have a cigar today. Maybe the next one we'll record it in a lounge, actually. But we got a few people. You want to talk about the people that we're going to talk about, reflect on?
Kind of my plan is Justin Benson. Let's be honest, he's your boss.
I've heard of
I
him.
know he didn't like that. He didn't
Sure.
like that, but let's be
That
honest.
he's my boss. We
I
called
mean,
him my
he's your
boss.
boss. I mean,
Yeah, he's my boss. That's
it is
fine.
what it is.
I think I'm more okay with it than he is, but that's fine.
But but you are business partners though too.
Sure.
So
Yeah, it's a both hand. It's a both hand.
There's multiple hats being worn.
Sure.
But that was a lot of fun. Then we're going to talk about Alex Seal, fellow Chick-fil-A-er. I
Yep.
mean, similar to you and I, doing consulting with lots of Chick-fil-A folks and leveraging
Yeah.
his skills and environment with a multi-unit operator out there. Probably $25
Yeah.
million business, if I had to guess.
Bro does
Couple hundred
not
roles.
like sauce. Eats all of his Chick-fil-A
Doesn't
without
like
sauce.
sauce.
That's great. I actually
Come
like
on,
that.
what?
I didn't eat hardly any sauce the entire time that I was at Chick-fil-A either.
Dude, I'm living proof that you can get fat eating grilled chicken.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, you put that Chick-fil-A sauce on, isn't it? It's like a Snickers bar, right?
Oh.
Just a little Chick-fil-A sauce.
It's not okay.
No, it's not. It's not. But, you know.
Hudson Brock, all right,
Yeah.
founder of Aloe Hired. You played hooky that day, so I
did.
did that one solo.
Yeah, you could call me Ferris Bueller on that one. It's my day off.
I like it.
Yeah.
Oh, you borrowed Dad's car for that one. That's good.
That's right. That's right.
And then lastly, your tennis buddy and leader extraordinaire, Michael Christensen.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of what I've got on the agenda. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I feel good. I feel good. Let's lock and load, man. Let's dive in. Let's dive in.
Okay, so Justin, founder of Bar Agency, partner of yours in Bar Coaching. He's also got Shiloh going on. They've got their e-commerce product too. Lots of exciting stuff going on in the bar world.
Yep.
And man, one of my favorite parts of that conversation was him talking about the value of mentorship and feeling like that was one of the things that had differentiated his journey and made it so rich and had helped him along so far was just an abundance of mentors. So give me some insight and some thoughts on mentorship and why mentorship is so important for entrepreneurs, founders, and leaders.
Yeah, I mean, Justin said it well, and Justin has surrounded himself with great people. It's a gift. He is a people person. Like, we go to conferences, we've gone to a couple conferences together in the real estate sphere, and I mean, that dude is like, I don't even know where he is half the time. He's like networking. He's out there. He's up late at night. I'm going to bed. He's still connecting. He's doing his thing, which is great. I don't know, man. The idea for some reason in my head oftentimes is like, hey, okay, if I'm going to have this business, I just got to have it kind of all figured out, right? Like Zuckerberg probably had it all figured out, or, Elon had it all figured out. But truthfully, I think most of the most successful people, Justin being a very successful person, know the value of finding somebody like a mentor, like somebody who's been there before, done it, and can go, hey, like, here's the thing. I've climbed this mountain before, and you can try and take that path that you want to take. But let me help you get the right gear at least before you go. Let me give you some intel on the mountain and the trail. Like, I can't climb it for you. But if it took me 10 years to climb the mountain, you might be able to do it in 2, and really take that to heart. So I think, there's different levels, right? There's like a mentor. Hey, I meet with you, kind of give some insight. I've been there before, all those kind of things. There's like a coach like you and I are doing, right? Hey, we're going to get in, we're going to work on some of the, fundamentals, maybe really challenge and push some of your thinking. And then there's just your in general community, like people that are there to challenge and encourage you and all those kind of things. I think it's multifaceted. I think that all of those things are really important. I also think, those mentors, and Justin, I think, talked about this, is good to kind of, what was the analogy? I think you put it in there, like bumpers, like you're bowling. hey, I don't want you to get too far one way or the other, right? So they can kind of bring you back. I think most things are like a pendulum. I think you see this in society all the time. We make a choice, and maybe that choice was good for a season, but we decide it's not good anymore, or we want to move away from it. And the typical reaction is actually to go all the way away from it. But that's pretty much doing the same thing, just on the other side. I think it's great to have somebody to offer some checks and balances and go, okay, again, is that a $90 reaction to a $10 problem? Like, are you just making something kind of out of nothing? B, if it is a problem, are you correcting it, the right way? Is that too much? Are you leveraging up too much? Because if we swing all the way to the other side, that's not super helpful either. So, yeah, man, I can't underestimate the value of people, and I don't know too many people who have made it to where they are without mentors and people to help them get there along the way.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no man is an island. Everybody needs a Sherpa. And it was interesting, speaking of Worcester a minute ago, one of the things Justin mentioned was this idea of like living in avalanche territory.
Mm-hmm.
And the
Yeah,
insight,
that cat lives there for sure.
yeah, like it's not a matter of sort of like, oh, when you get into avalanche territory, it's like, no, you are the avalanche. Like you are the avalanche. And if I remember correctly, it was like it was Wooster saying, hey, I'm not trying to, as a mentor to you, as a counselor, as a coach to you, I'm not trying to get you out of avalanche territory. I'm trying to help you survive it.
Right.
Because we can't change that about who you are as a person. You're about your nature.
Yeah. Well, and it's exactly accurate. Now, listen, not everybody's going to live in avalanche territory. That is a Justin Benson move. If you're an Enneagram person, he's a 7, right? So adventure. There's something that excites him about living there. And so to Wooster's point, I think Wooster's very good at helping people go, okay, this is the general direction of me as a person. And rather than change that, let's accept that. And then let's show you not just how to survive, but maybe even thrive there. Because the truth is, you can get swept up by the avalanche, or you can learn to survive it. You can also probably even learn how to grab your snowboard and kind of ride that thing out, right? And actually use that as fuel. I think that those are a lot of your different options. So the important thing there too, I think, to think about is like, okay, who am I? Where does my energy, like, where does that really come from? And then how do we make that sustainable? Don helped make that more sustainable for Justin. And then when Justin is actually living in avalanche territory, I think it gives him that, adrenaline push to keep going. It excites him. It brings him to life. So I did think that was really good. And he's gotten very good at, figuring that out.
Yeah. He talked a lot about his journey to self-awareness and how difficult it had been for him, but ultimately that he had discovered who he was and what his unique value
Mm-hmm.
was.
Mm-hmm.
And that because of that, he then learned a little bit the hard way again, how to delegate to people who have other strengths and how to kind of move his weaknesses off of his plate and surround himself with the right people.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the question, and I think he would agree with this, is like, do you need to be the guy, or are you okay surrounding yourself with the guys and gals that are going to be the strength? Like, and here's the deal. I think everyone, I don't know too many people that in 2024, I think it's 2024, would not say that, would not say, yeah, I need to surround myself with people that have strengths that aren't mine. It's different to say it than it is to actually do it. To like actually be humble enough to go, maybe organization is not my strength, and I actually need to like hire somebody, and then not just hire them, but empower them to do that job. Because there's a difference between I plugged you and played. I get it. I'm not, that person. And hey, I'm actually going to empower you. Like, I'm not just going to dump this on. I'm going to empower you. I want you to thrive in that. I'm going to go find the different strategic pieces around my team for them to thrive. So maybe I'm not a great public speaker. Am I okay with this person speaking if it's not my thing, even though I am the face of the company? I know I'm comfortable enough and humble enough to equip, empower, and encourage those people. That is a really important skill. I talk about the difference often between here and here, head and heart, or a lot of head knowledge. I think most people can read a book and know that. They know that, oh gosh, I can't play right tackle and quarterback at the same time. That's impossible. I think very few allow this to connect to this and are humble enough to really put that into play. That's powerful.
Along those same lines, sort of like internal disconnect obviously leads to external conflict. And one of the things that he said was kind of a hard-won lesson was not shying away from conflict, particularly as a leader, right? So self-awareness leads to, what we would call one of our values, like clarity, right? Internal clarity and self-awareness. You can have conflict in a much healthier way when you have self-awareness.
Mm.
Like your others' awareness actually can flourish and grow when you have clarity internally.
Yeah.
And so, I'm passionate about conflict. I tell people all the time, about 60% of the work that I do with my clients is giving them a lens and essentially five tools for having conflict, right? It's like 5 styles that you can go practice and you can go plug and play when you're in a conflict to navigate the conflict in a way that's healthy and authentic and actually
Yeah.
leads to resolution. It's perpetual avoidance or turning conflict into competition, oftentimes, that we want to kind of fall into those ditches, right? And the truth is that sometimes we should avoid conflict. Sometimes we should be extremely assertive and fight for certain things. But by and large, large majority of the time, we're kind of somewhere in the middle between those two extremes, collaborating, compromising, and working towards a healthy third option with people.
Yeah.
And I think that skill is critically important for leaders.
Yeah. Tell me more about that, Brad. Tell me more about why my self awareness helps me with conflict and understanding others.
Well, don't you think in order to have a healthy conflict, you have to know what you want?
Did you just ask my question? You just asked me a question right back? You son.
I'm a coach. I'm a coach. That's what I'm supposed to do.
What was your question again? I got lost because you just.
Don't you think that if you want, or if you're going to have a healthy conflict, you have to know what you want going into it? I mean, if you don't know what you want, then what is it that you would be having conflict about?
Okay, we're just gonna have fun with this. I'm gonna say maybe I don't know what I want yet, which can be the source of a lot of conflict. Maybe I have an idea of what I want.
Could be that you know that you don't want something that you feel is being forced on you, and
Sure.
that's leading to a conflict,
Yeah.
right? But there's a big difference between solving for something you don't want and solving for something you do want. When you're solving for something you don't want, we call that a lose-lose, right? Because the other person who's trying to force you into something loses, and you also lose because you don't know what you want.
Yeah. So my awareness, to go back all the way, would be: do I understand myself and what I want, what I'm hoping to get out of this situation? And hopefully my awareness of me gives me a better understanding that, because for me, self-awareness is twofold, and I want to see if this adds up with you. All right. So that's the part on me, right? And I control me, and that's great. But for me, my own self-awareness hopefully helps me put myself in the spot where I can be curious about what the other person actually wants and seek to understand. Like, if I can get clear actually on what I want, for me, typically, if I'm really healthy and I'm really living into that self awareness, I know that I know what I want out of the situation. And if I have a good grasp on that, then I can actually kind of take that, put that on the side, and go with, Stephen Covey's, hey, 7 habits of highly successful people, like always seek to understand before seeking to be understood. That to me is what is powerful.
You would say that. You would say that because you are an others focused person.
Sure.
You would say that because rather than getting your needs met 80% of the time, you are going to seek to meet other people's needs 80% of the time.
I mean, yes and no. All right, I like this. This is fun because yes, I agree with that, but also here's the manipulative sick side of my head. I know intrinsically about people that if I actually stay curious about what you want, I have a much better chance of getting what I want because yeah, but actually rarely I haven't had the case where if I'm still curious about what you want, I don't think I have very many cases where this is not true. um, because it means that I have to assert myself over you. As long as I'm curious about the other person, we can get to this end result and what they want, right? And we can do it in potentially a collaborative way. Sometimes it's collaborative, sometimes it's not. But I haven't found the case where seeking to understand what Brad wants doesn't help me actually get to the solution, even if the solution is what I want.
Okay, I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with more often than not, being curious and seeking to understand will serve you in getting what you want. However, caveat being, when the other person doesn't reciprocate that, it becomes very difficult to sustainably get what you want with a person who's actually not that interested in understanding you,
Sure.
right?
Yeah. I mean,
And
I
and
don't, yeah.
unfortunately, in my experience, as leaders, right? As leaders, particularly when we're dealing with high performers, right? High performers are oftentimes low self-awareness. Now, the highest of the high, the best high performers, the ones that are healthy and that sustain high performance over time, I think you and I would both agree, they move past that lack of self, lack of others awareness pretty quickly. And that's why they sustain their performance, right? Because they can do exactly what you're talking about right now.
Sure.
But most of the people that I work with who are high performers, they became high performers by being very, very determined to get what they want when they want it, right? And to produce results.
Sure.
And that is a different kind of function than helping other people get what they want.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I agree. I was looking for the infinite game. I thought I had it here because I was going to say, Brad, we should remind everybody to go read this book because he talks about just that. He talks about that idea and kind of the disconnect, the burnout, the all those kind of things, you know. And I don't think it would change. You know, it's going to change my. It's not going to change my approach. So I'm still going to be curious about what somebody else thinks. Um, even if I'm going to lead them to water that I want them to drink, you know.
Yeah,
But
and I totally think, yeah, I'm agreeing with you in that with the right person, a style of conflict that is highly cooperative, that is very much planted in meeting their needs is super healthy and effective. But I do think that there are individuals who engage with conflict in very win-lose styles. And those types of people have to be confronted with boundaries. They have to literally, mentally, emotionally bump up against the word no, right? Or
sure,
an obstinate opposing force in
yeah,
order to understand that they can't have something that they want, or that something that they want is inappropriate for the other person, or what have you.
sure.
And so, um,
Yeah,
it,
we
it,
should do a whole series on conflict here. It'd be great.
yeah, there's so much, and I've spent 60% more than half of my time, the majority
Well,
of my time, helping people just work through how do I engage in this conflict with this person.
yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. And I've had a client recently, and this is where I actually think the curiosity wins the day. Like I had a client that was kind of upset. We had started to have some conversations and so forth, and we figured out what they were upset about wasn't actually what they wanted or needed. And there was just a bunch of miscommunication, right? And to be fair, oftentimes I think that what happens in conflict is both of us share what we want without trying to understand the other one and stay curious about it and ask a bunch of questions. And actually, if we asked a bunch of questions and we actually said what was on our mind and our thinking, we might actually get to the result that we wanted more quickly. But we spend so much time actually avoiding that dance and not talking about it or quasi talking about it that we end up in the spot where it becomes way bigger. Because usually the problem, like I would say most answers are simple, they're just not easy. Like most of the time in that conflict, the answer is what needs to be done is pretty simple. It may not be easy, but it's pretty straightforward. And I think one thing that could unlock so much of that is really staying curious. And I think this was Chad that talked about this, the idea that like, what could I be missing? What could I be missing? Even if you're missing nothing, even if you are the boss, and ultimately you have the trump card at the end of the day, and we're going to do whatever the you want, right? Like if you can approach it with that, it's really hard for even your high performers to refute much about that. It's really hard because you come with a sense of, let me understand this from your lens. They could be totally way off and it may not be the direction the company needs to go. But that's going to be hard to refute, rebuttal, go up against, it lays a common ground.
I think that what people need is they need to know what the mental move is after they've been curious and they have the answer to what the other person that they're in conflict wants. When they understand what that thing is, then they have to think about the strategy to help that person get what they want without fully and completely sacrificing their own needs, right? We
Sure.
can we can all take it on the chin every now and again and give just give without anything in return. But the reality is that for all of us as people, right? And the cliche is the oxygen mask, and it's the cliche because it's such a good example, right? Like
Yep.
if
Yep.
if the plane was going down and I walked from row to row putting everybody's masks on, and I'm running out of air and I'm flying around all over the place, like, well, pretty soon I'm going to be dead, right? And there's not
Sure.
a lot of good that I'm going to do to the rest of to the rest of the group of people I'm with when the plane finally, gets back on track or lands or whatever it is, right? And so I think that curiosity, it leads to a really clear place, but we've got to figure out once we get to that place of clarity, what our kind of action items are to make sure that we maintain our own integrity through meeting that person's needs. And I know this is true of you. It's true of me. There have been instances in my life where I've been very quick to meet someone else's needs, and I have not, to use a Woosterism, kept inventory of my own in that process.
Sure.
And I get further and further down the line in an agreement, meeting that person's needs to find myself accidentally, inadvertently resentful of the fact that I never expressed my needs in that relationship or conflict.
Sure.
And then rather than take ownership of that, I blamed the other person because they never asked me what my needs were.
Yeah.
And so that's where I think being curious, it leads the horse to water, but the horse still has to drink, right?
Yeah, I mean, you still have to be courageous. It doesn't take anything else out of it. Like you still have to look, if I only ask you what you need, but I never share what's going on in my head, that's not that courageous either. Like it gives the appearance of it, but then I'm kind of the martyr that like came in and let me solve. And yeah, that typically leads to bitterness and resentment. You either have to understand that that's what you're doing and I'm just here to serve this other person, or you go, okay, cool, cool. If I was to be really brave, what would I say right now? Okay, yeah, you know what? I totally agree. I didn't see it from that perspective. Is that true? If that's true for you, then fantastic. If it's not and you have different, then it's time to be courageous. It's time to share that. And then look for what's, the Michael Scott win win win, right? I win for successfully navigating conflict at work. But truthfully, that's the goal. And if we stay curious, we can understand, hey, how are you approaching this thing that we set a vision for and that we're going towards? How am I approaching this thing? And then how do we approach this thing together? That's where the curiosity can actually equal alignment, but it doesn't equal alignment if you are not courageous enough to A, ask, B, do it humbly and actually listen, and C, share what is going on for you too. Like what's occurring for you, what's coming up for you as well, you know?
That's really good. It ties in well to another idea that Justin did a great job articulating, which is I kind of have a choice, right? Like I can go the loss aversion route and I can be very downside risk oriented. I can be so motivated by fear that I operate out of fear. Or I can look to a vision so strong and so inspiring, a purpose so transcendent that I'm just pulled by the power of that inspiration. And he talked about fuel and fear being this incredibly flammable fuel that he had used in his life to just get it done and to perform and to grow whatever it was he was doing. But the recognition part in that it's not a healthy or sustainable burn. It's not a good kind of fuel. It's a fuel that ultimately damages the engine, if you will. And the desire to use inspiration as that healthy, clean fuel. So I'd love to know how you experience. I mean, do you experience clients coming to you more often because of the pain that they're in, or because they have a vision so strong that they need help achieving it?
Oh, typically pain.
That's right.
Yeah, you don't. Yeah,
Same here.
yeah, you don't get a lot of people that are super inspired going, "Hey, that's the mountain that I'm going to climb." You may get some because if you're wise, right? If you're Tom Brady, I don't know if you know who Tom Brady is. He's probably the best football player of all time. Okay, to go, right? I mean, Tom Brady is smart enough that he goes, "If I'm going to get there, I got to have a coach," right? But typically, it's pain that leads us to go get help. When you have that vision, when you have that powerful vision, you're going to figure like you're going to get there, right? That does sustain you, that does keep you going on the darkest night. Figure it out, put the right people in place. It is interesting. I think oftentimes if you have the vision, the results are going to take care of themselves potentially. Like if it's a real vision that you're really connected with, of like, that is where I'm going, the operations, the getting the right people, those things are going to happen, right? And I think oftentimes we trade that around. We put the cart before the horse and we go, okay, I got to get all the right people in place and blah blah blah. And, well, that stuff is important, but yes, the fuel that keeps people going, that I think is sustainable, is vision.
For you and
And
I, that's developing a million leaders,
right,
right?
yep,
Depending on the day, we're more indexed into what does it mean to develop. And on the next day, we're more indexed into let's hit 1,000,000.
right,
And I think that that's a lot of fun. That's a vision so strong that it prevents me from quitting on my hardest days.
sure, yeah, yeah, and that's what you need, right? If your vision was, I just got to keep food on the table, right? And it's based out of fear, or I just don't want to fail, which I've been there. And I too related a lot. I'm like, oh, I spent a good chunk of my life. And fear it will get you going. Shane Kuiper said this, like it will get you going. It just won't sustain you. Like it runs out. You get tired of running on uh, the, the dopamine hit of being anxious, but coming through. Like that's a real thing that I've
Oh, your
done.
body's just not,
No.
it just requires way, way too much rest in that state that it can't, like, I could work a 12-hour day doing stuff I love and have a
Mm.
massive amount of energy when I get home at the end of the night.
Oh,
Like I could
100%.
work a 7 to 5, what is that, 10,
Yep.
12 hours? I don't know, 5 or
Yep.
5 to 5, do that frequently and get home and I'm like ready to play, ready to be
Yep.
dad and husband.
Yep.
But on the days where I just get it kicked in and I'm like exhausted, like it could have been an 8-hour day, but
Yeah.
because of what was, transpiring in that 8 hours. So I totally resonate with that. And I agree, like, and I've used fear and anxiety to get me through tough patches, but I've always come out of the end of that 60, 90, 180-day period, however long, feeling like horrible. physically, mentally, emotionally completely depleted.
Yeah. I've done it for years, you know. You can do it it's not that you can't do it. You can. Like you can, right? Like that's the thing. If you want to do it, and I would say it's easier because it is our default mechanism as people, right? If you went in scientifically, they'd say, well, fight or flight. We are wired to essentially look for fear and figure out how we're going to survive. But, where we are today, I don't typically have to worry about death on a day-to-day basis. With the way you drive, I would if I'm in your car. But so it does work, but it's just not the best fuel, like you said. It will work, but eventually it's going to run out, and you're going to have a car with the engine smoking. And I've done it plenty of times. The engine's smoking, it's still not going. I'm going to put in a little bit more fear for the fuel there, and just try and keep going. And maybe I can scare myself a little bit more. And you can do that. You can hobble along forward. But if you actually want to make it down the freeway, if you want to get to your destination, if you want to do that and like actually enjoy it at the end too, because typically when it's out of fear for me, I get like relief, but not joy. So, well, Brad, we did have some other guests. I don't know if you knew that.
We
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think we're gonna have to do
yeah.
another one.
That's fine. I think this is great. Yeah, I think this is great. I think talking about conflict is super important. To me, what it's bringing up, honestly, is like, hey, we do a whole, and we probably should. 60% of your clients. I mean, I spent, so much time with so many of my clients talking about different conflicts with, managers, employees, people, friends, family. Even my story at the beginning, there was a lot of conflict between me and my mom that had to be worked through. And like, how do you stay courageous in that? And then there's plenty of moments when I wasn't courageous, in our marriages. Neither one of us have ever had any conflict. We don't have to worry about that sentence either, because of course,
because our wives aren't going to listen to this, and we're extremely accommodating, and we do whatever we're told.
Yeah, definitely. And we're always right, which is great and nice for us. All those things are great, but I do think the importance of what is kind of percolating here, and so we'll call this, lounge 10 with more to come, part 2 potentially. But I think the interesting thing that is arising is like, man, how do we do things in a sustainable way? Conflict, what's the fuel that we put in our body? Like we could do 15 podcasts on both of those and not have enough. Like there's enough content in there. People probably would want us to talk to other people about it, because I'm sure they get bored of our voices. But
yeah, it's just amazing how even just confronting people with having to answer the question, hey, in whatever area of life, do you have the clarity to just in one or two sentences or actually articulate what you want?
Right.
And a large majority of the time, people, they have a picture of it in their minds when they close their eyes. They can imagine what they want, and kind of like in a way that they watch a movie or in a way that they look through a photo album. They can see something in their imagination for their future. But if they were required to actually turn it into a game and create a scoreboard and put a time frame around it and orient their decisions around it, that's a whole different way of being around your desires. Right.
Yeah.
And that's where very, very few people have been trained and taught and equipped on how to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. If I was to ask most people, hey, I want you to tell me your vision, what you want for yourself, but do it like I'm a first grader and do it in under 30 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. I love that.
You should be able to do that, right? I mean, all of us should say it's palpable, it's tangible, it should be right there. It should be on the edge of but even myself included, like how often am I doing with that, and then connecting with that, and then spending some time daily to go, okay, right? Am I in a business setting or in a nonprofit setting or in my family setting? Am I orienting myself towards that? Do my visions and do my values and my actions line up with my vision and on my march? This is funny. We go, hey man, how did I get this far off? And I go, well, where was your aim?
Yeah.
Where was
It's
your
like,
aim?
well, it was like, my aim was like,
Yeah, I
this.
mean, it was, so, right. And it only
Yeah.
takes like 1 degree to be
Right.
off. You talk to some people that you go, man, how did you do it? And they go, man, well, my vision was super razor sharp. And it may have taken 10 years to figure out what my vision was, but that was important, So, anyway, all that, yeah, it's good. It's good. It's good. So, Brad, anything you want to leave?
Big thank you to Justin. We'll get to the other gentleman here on another lounge, but that was fun. That was a fun dialogue, and he obviously left us with a lot to think about and talk about. And so, big thank you to Justin. For the listeners, guys, like, subscribe, comment, share, get the lick and stick tattoo, join the community, etch it into your sideburns, and we would love to see you jump into group coaching. Again, $750 a month. It's going to be 6 months long. If you pay up front, there's a big fat discount. Big idea is make some critical commitments for 2025, and we are going to walk you through fulfilling them and actually becoming your future self. So we'll see you on the other side, friends.